Quidditch, the sport inspired by the Harry Potter novels, is
Muggle Quidditch.
Muggle Quidditch.
Technically.
Yes.
The one played by real people with a broomstick between their legs.
I feel like I almost need to spell that out.
Yeah.
In real life, there are people who run around on broomsticks in a field pretending to be in Harry Potter, but not anymore because they're now changing the name to Quadball. Now, partly this is to do with the naming rights because Warner Brothers owns the name Quidditch, but also the various Quidditch governing bodies, I can't imagine such things exist, but there you go, have tried to distance themselves from JK Rowling and her anti-trans views, as they put it. Ella, what have you made of this?
I'm so incredibly angry that I'm being made to talk about Quidditch and that these people are making me care about Quidditch. But it tells you something about the sort of complete childishness of the world of trans ideology and these kind of political spats, that they would care, that they would take it upon themselves to have their kind of bureaucratic meetings to distance themselves from JK Rowling. And there's a point to be made about the fact that, quite a serious point, that you have this assault on an author who, whatever you think about Harry Potter, and I think far too many adults care about Harry Potter, really, that's the campaign I want to run. Ban anyone over the age of 12. Yeah, reading it. But this, very accomplished author who, let's remind ourselves, actually, has enabled and has helped huge number of a generation of kids to read, and that is to her credit, and some wonderful books, has now been turned into the main villain of her fiction, like a Voldemort figure who no one can come anywhere near because she dares to have a political opinion that, by the way, most of the country holds. And so then it's like the sort of politicization of everything, that they can't just enjoy this stupid game from this stupid book, that they have to turn it into some kind of a political display that only will get applause on Twitter. Because, if I'm going to be really cruel here, I can imagine the people who play this sort of game, most of them probably are actually not that politically interested. They're just kind of, nerdy, sporty people who want to get on with it. Why do you have to turn it into this ridiculous political row?
Ella, you mentioned Voldemort, and I think it kind of is a case of she who must not be named, because, you've seen not only this renaming of the sport to Quadball, you've seen Rowling's name taken from schoolhouses, you've seen her name not appear in trailers for the kind of Fantastic Beasts films, you've seen her not appear in Harry Potter reunion specials and things like that. I mean, this erasure of the creator is just absurd, isn't it, Tom?
It's all a bit commissar vanishes. I mean, it's incredible. There's just an attempt to completely etch her out, not just to kind of push her out of polite society, but to kind of remove her trace from her own work and, legacy in that sense. And it's really, really odd. And as you say, I thought with the HBO Max example, where they had this kind of reunion, this... I thought that was fascinating because, you had this huge film franchise, obviously built off of the back of this very successful book. And it has elevated the careers of, let's be frank, a lot of very ropey young talents in relation to that. And yet all of them have been taking it in turns in recent years to denounce her in one way, shape or form, whether it's Emma Watson or whether it's Daniel Radcliffe. They've kind of, at some point or another, either in a kind of nudge and wink sort of way, or actually quite explicitly basically said that they believe this smear, and it is a smear, that JK Rowling is some sort of anti-trans bigot. And you think, first of all, just how incredibly ungrateful this is. I mean, they would be nowhere were it not for JK Rowling. It gives it this kind of weird neo-Maoist Red Guards kind of tint to it. But then also you do have this phenomenon which is fascinating, which is the younger fans, particularly ones who are young, probably weren't kids at the time that the books first came out, but have since really got into the whole world of it and the franchise, who are, again, have this kind of horror and this kind of vitriolic response, and TikTok videos of people burning their copies of Harry Potter books and all the rest of it.
Even that New York Times promotional video of, actually, was an adult imagining Harry Potter without its creator.
It just shows you how out hand this whole thing has gone. Like, it is not an exaggeration to say that for a slim but significant proportion of the population, JK Rowling has been turned into a folk devil, into a witch. Effectively, nothing else could capture the level of hysteria in relation to someone who only really said, I'm worried about sex-based rights in relation to the trans thing. That's all she's ever really said. So the complete and pretty devastating kind of character assassination is complete in the minds of large groups of people, even people who, 5 minutes ago would consider themselves big fans of hers.
Ella, I mean, this is a serious issue that JK Rowling's trying to talk about, that she's being denounced over. Why do you think we're not capable of having those conversations?
Well, because any discussion about sex-based rights or just reality, biology, reality, normal life, how people in a society define each other and relate to each other, has like so many things, like discussions about white privilege, about misogyny now in relation to Love Island. It's become that you can't have a normal conversation. You have to either sit on two extremes, either side of the fence. And for the vast majority of people, they have the kind of nuanced position that actually JK Rowling herself has put forward, which is that, people like her are blue in the face saying, I respect trans people. I think they're great. I don't want to do anything mean to them. I mean, for the vast majority of people, that is the default position, because the vast majority of people aren't assholes. But by the way, I care about things like, having different toilets and having different changing rooms, because it plays an important role in society. So, it might sound to viewers and listeners like a stupid thing about Quidditch and, why should anyone care about this? But actually it's a symptom of a much bigger trend in society, both an intolerance in talking about women's rights, sex-based rights and all of that, but also a kind of really creeping Philistinism in relation to how we approach art and individuals in society.
Tom, final thoughts?
I just think at the risk of making a slightly clumsy connection here, the fact that grown adults are running around playing Quidditch and the fact that grown adults are running around being upset by other people's opinions is surely part of the same problem here. Like, there is a real infantilization that has gone on whereby anyone who is made to feel that little bit uncomfortable by another person's view, even someone who in JK Rowling's case, not that long ago would have been considered, even if she had maybe a different position on certain things, would be considered within the kind of lovey community of the good, if you like. That has completely broken down, that hysteria has taken over wholesale. And at the root of this, there's very different ways that you could cast it, that you could understand it, that you could see how we've ended up in this very intolerant, nasty climate. But at the root of this is a kind of self-infantilization as well. Is these people are massive babies who can't deal with things that even ever so slightly upset them. And if we tackle that, I think we'd be a long way towards tackling that intolerance and maybe making sure that, grown adults will learn to read another book and play a proper sport.